Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. As someone who bled for this country, I'm horrified that President Trump continues to thrust our troops into irresponsible, open-ended campaigns with no clear authorities, no set timeline, no transparent end state, and that extends to President Trump's misuse of the military on American soil. In December, this committee held the hearing that I pushed for on this administration's misuse of the National Guard in American cities. Mr. Ditlevson, our exchange during that hearing was very worrisome to me. I gave you the opportunity to clarify to the American people that this administration would not deploy troops across state lines, contrary to the desires of that state, for any mission beyond protection of federal property. You said, and I quote, "I can't commit to that." So you would not commit to not deploying troops across state lines for anything mission other than to protect federal property. So this is where I want to pick up, because I think the American people deserve to know this administration's plans for using the military in their backyards. And in fact, when you tried to activate the Illinois National Guard for law enforcement functions and were denied by our governor, whom the people of Illinois elected and have the opportunity to kick out of office if we want to, you sent in the Texas National Guard to try to do law enforcement functions, and were stopped by the courts. Mr. Ditlevson, you're nominated to be the senior defense official who will approve use of the military within the United States territory. And during this hearing, you've indicated to my colleagues that there are circumstances that you would advise deploying forces near polling places. And I want to read to you 18 U.S. Code 593, interference by armed forces. And I quote, "Whoever being such officer or member," and this is of the armed forces of the United States, "prevents or attempts to prevent by force, threat, intimidation, advice, or otherwise any qualified voter of any state from fully exercising their right of suffrage at any general or special election." So in light of 18 U.S. Code 593, please consider that as you're answering my questions. In answering Senator Peters, you said you could see troops deployed in logistic support capacities near election sites. What distance from a polling place would make you feel comfortable advising the Secretary of Defense to deploy forces near sites to stay consistent with not intimidating voters? I also would like to know if you would be advising that those military troops be in full battle dress uniform. Would they be wearing body armor? Would they be carrying their rifles? Would they be carrying their sidearms? Would they be carrying ammunition? Because are you expecting logistical functions to be like those we encountered in Iraq, where you actually had to fight your way in and fight your way out? Or are you just talking about logistical support? Maybe you can define what you mean by that. So how far from the polling places? What are they going to be doing? Would they be wearing battle dress uniform, body armor, Kevlar, sidearms, and have ammunition nearby?
Senator, thank you for the chance to address this, and appreciate our exchange in December and your concern for this issue. It's very important that we do it right. And my commitment to you is, if confirmed, whatever we advise to the Secretary is always going to be through the Office of General Counsel to make sure that is a lawful recommendation going up to him for any deployment of National Guard. As per your questions for the specific distance and what equipment people would wear on any deployment, we always look at what the threat scenario may be and tailor that for whatever they may have to deal with. And so, as you pointed out, for logistics, it'd be a very different footprint than some other type of mission, but we always want to make sure we tailor, we provide everything that a soldier may need before they would go out and do a mission. That's just across the board for the department, and we always want to make sure that whatever they go do is lawful by having an Office of General Counsel thorough review of our recommendation to the Secretary.
So you're saying that there's a mission other than logistics, you just said. So you can see deploying troops to polling places in a capacity other than the logistics mission that you just at this hearing said that would be why you would put them there?
Senator, I was speaking more broadly for National Guard deployments in general. This is a normal routine process that we do for any mission that the National Guard would go out and do. And it would apply to—
Do you think it's normal and routine to activate the National Guard against a governor's wishes to go man polling places?
Senator, I wouldn't characterize routine or not. What I'm saying is that the National Guard—
those are your words, not mine. You just said routine.
In the routine process of deploying National Guard, something that we always do is the course of business, because we want to make sure that our service members are safe no matter what mission they're going to be faced with.
Okay. You're answering a different— So going back to what Senator Peters asked you earlier, are you saying that you would deploy National Guard troops in some capacity other than logistics? Because you said you could see sending them there for logistics to polling places. And now are you saying that there are potentially other reasons to send them to polling stations beyond logistics? And that they may actually be fully up-armored, fully combat equipped, depending on what you decide is the situation on the ground?
Senator,
And
it's
in the United
speculative.
States of America at polling places?
It's speculative, so I can't speak to that.
Then let me give you another chance to reassure all of us. If the president labeled a United States-based organization, say the American Civil Liberties Union, a domestic terrorist organization, which, by the way, is a list with no statutory basis in the United States or international law, would you consider that to be sufficient authority to use military force or resources against any American who affiliates with the ACLU on U.S. soil?
Senator, I can't speculate on that.
Okay.
What I can assure you is that anything
All
that we
of these
do is
should be
lawful
easy
in the department.
commitments, but apparently for you, they're not. And I just need to make something very clear on the record. If the administration was serious about working with blue governors to combat what courts have found to be baseless claims of lawlessness, President Trump would have given Governor Pritzker more than a 2-hour window on Saturday, October 4th, to respond to his official request to call up the Illinois National Guard under Title 32 before he federalized those troops. He gave the governor 2 hours to respond. That is not a serious effort to work with our governors. That is using the military to intimidate political rivals. President Trump is diverting dramatic amounts of troops, military assets, and resources to support federal law enforcement agencies, which are not always trained properly or prepared to use those resources, as the incident of the closing of the El Paso airspace shows. I am concerned that you can't make basic reassurances to this committee as to how you would advise on the calling up of the National Guard to be there at polling places at an election on United States soil. First you say, oh yeah, I can see doing that for logistic purposes. So when I asked you if they're doing logistical support, are they going to be in battle dress uniform with ammunition? You say, oh, well, we're going to let the lawyers decide that. I'm asking you, what would you advise? And you can't commit to your advice. You're just saying, we're going to let the lawyers decide that. And if they decide that we need to blow up the streets of Chicago or any other city of this great nation in order to provide logistical support, then we're going to do that. That is not reassuring to the American people. You cannot intimidate Americans when they go out to vote. It is against the law. It is against code. I just read that code to you. I am at a loss. The American people will not stand for this. I will not stand for it. And my colleagues in Congress should not stand for this administration's attempts to use our nation's military to intimidate Americans from exercising their fundamental right to cast a vote in elections. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator